Hey, Shawn here, gamer wannabe and tightass extraordinaire. It's hard to find cheap, physical Nintendo Switch games that don't suck. I just want high-quality, tangible goods without making any personal sacrifices whatsoever. Is that really too much to ask? Now I know you're asking, Shawn, what kind of proper cheapskate buys a current-gen system anyway? Well, it was on sale and there was a lot of alcohol involved. I had a moment of weakness. Yeah, I broke down and drunk spent my future children's college funds, but that was a long time ago, and now the Switch has been out nearly 4 years, believe it or not. Which in video game console years is old enough for the early bird special at Denny's, definitely long enough that I've got some options. Like, hey, my non-existent kids won't get to college, but maybe I can have some fun and still afford to send my dog to obedience school. I'm not throwing any shade at buying digital or brand new or anything like that. That stuff is basically the whole industry pie, while my existence in this delicious gaming metaphor is that tiny plastic bistro table that keeps the box from touching the pizza. I honestly think my cheap physical preference comes from being super terrible at actually playing video games, so after about 30 minutes of failing miserably, I still get joy from adding it to the curated selection of good, reasonably priced titles on my shelf. Or trading it if it's crap. Which brings me to the point. The Nintendo Switch and a handful of cheap physical games I want to review to whatever pitiful extent my sloth-like gaming reflexes can muster. Obviously this is a small sample, not all-inclusive, but I am going in order of how much I like them from least to most, if that sort of thing is your bag, baby. Coincidentally, they're probably not the sexiest games, unless you're like me and you get unnaturally, uncomfortably excited by good values. Just level your expectations a bit because this is not a garage sale jackpot or some shitty pay-by-the-bid auction website, just good old basic bargain hunting. So get in, losers, we're going shopping for 5 cheap physical Nintendo Switch games that don't suck. Also, you're not a loser, I just like quoting the movie Mean Girls. Killer Queen Black is a competitive online multiplayer real-time strategy action platformer, whatever the hell that means. It's easier just to call it a multiplayer arcade port brought by Bumblebear Games to the Switch in 2019. Now my wife doesn't have much interest in this kind of thing, and I'm still waiting on my dog to get back from obedience school, having developed fine motor skills and opposable thumbs. So in the meantime, I'm forced to play alone, online, with other real-life humans, which I hate because I'm a curmudgeon who's bad at things. But I like the idea of this game, and it's easy to see why it's probably a great arcade cabinet. The style is retro pixel and very neatly detailed. The music and sound effects are awesome. The subject matter, bees with weapons, snail riding, and berry carrying, is a little weird, but I guess it makes more sense that it's Queen Bee inspired as opposed to Queen Band inspired. But honestly, I'd prefer the latter. Maybe some kind of high-score shmup where you play as Freddie Mercury firing awesome music sound waves at fans or something. Despite my personal disdain for online multiplayer, I appreciate the appeal and the competitive vibes this game creates. The offering here is limited, and I consider it a niche subgenre, perfect for the aspiring melitologist in your life, or just someone who likes these short-spurt, amped-up competitive experiences. So I recommend that the average Switch owner at least look into it, because it's gonna be a no from me, but Killer Queen Black is probably excellent for a specific audience. Poi Explorer Edition, from Polykid and Alliance Digital to the Switch in 2017, is basically a classic Nintendo-style 3D platformer for kids. It's probably weird to have a knockoff children's game in this list, but frankly, it's not bad. It's pretty simple looking, but with a bright, crisp color palette, and everything is appropriately clear for a 3D platformer. The soundtrack, on the other hand, is kinda epic. I did eventually turn off the sound effects after hearing every single time my character jumps. Honestly, it was starting to sound like a karate movie directed by kindergartners. Functionally, everything is fine. Even in modern 3D platformers, I still struggle with timing and perception because remember, I suck at everything, but I had an easy enough time adapting to this, also due to the low difficulty, I suppose. I especially appreciate having multiple moves available to you right away. double jumps, mid-air dives, and most importantly, the classic Lara Croft ledge climb. I actually cracked up a few times while I was playing this. It's unintentionally hilarious. Like when you mid-air dive from extreme heights but don't take fall damage, or the inexplicably funny death animation. Classic. The funniest thing, though, is the whole narrative. You play as two orphan kids who agree, unquestioningly, to fly around in a literal ship with some complete stranger old man. Like Skies of Arcadia meets an episode of Law & Order Special Victims Unit, but wrapped up in shiny paper to appeal to children. Oh, and then the old bastard makes you bring him gold coins in exchange for basic tools. Dude, there are coins everywhere, and we're talking about a shovel. Can't we just share that shit? I did not play very long, even by my usual complete lack of standards, but it's easy to tell that Poi is a well-made homage to classic Nintendo 3D platformers made with the younglings in mind. Coincidentally, this game's biggest fault might be that Super Mario Odyssey, for example, is already pretty kid-friendly in its own right. But this is very refreshing given the amount of flashy crap out there that preys upon youthful innocence. Again, I recommend that the average Switch owner look into it. It could be a really good fit for your kids or a family who plays games together. Super Bomberman R came to the Switch in 2017 from Konami and Hexadrive, and it was received with cynicism. If memory serves me right, it was a little clunky, thin on content, and maybe should not have been a full-priced launch title. But that's all old Super Bomberman R. These days it has DLC and updates, and it's readily available. So I say it's time to give your on-again, off-again, ex-significant developer Konami another look. It's really more mature now, it promises. In between gameplay, the music is that kind of earwormy chiptune pop, and the animation is extremely flat, bright, cartoony, but during actual gameplay the whole aesthetic is a lot more subdued. I don't like either theme, but it all works, I guess. Also, there's a lot more narrative than I expected from a Bomberman game, but nothing that held my attention at all. And the gameplay is... well, it's Bomberman. It's not top-tier Bomberman, though. I prefer top-down as opposed to this 80% angle stuff. I know I'm probably just bad at life, but it makes physical locations and barriers not quite as clear as I want. I like the gameplay options available, including the Grand Prix mode, where it was fun to see other Konami characters bomberfied, and compensating for my complete lack of skill by grinding to amp my character up in the store. In short, Super Bomberman R is super bomb, man! I mean, kinda. If you're familiar with Bomberman, this is an okay entry in the series. If you don't know Bomberman, then this is pretty fun strategic action where you blow stuff up. Once again, I recommend Switch owners check it out, and if you like what you see, pull the trigger. Sid Meier's Civilization VI was handmade just for the Switch in 2018 by then 64-year-old Sid Meier himself. Amazing, right? But actually it's just from Firaxis and 2K Games for several consoles. It's a turn-based strategy experience that is best described as a wildly complex board game which could not possibly exist in physical board game form. Part of me wants to love this game for its marvelous aesthetic and franchise prestige. The other part of me wants to hate it for its painstakingly deliberate gameplay and tedious detail. But I can never make up my mind because every time I pop this in, I forget where I am for 5 hours, then eventually come to as Cleopatra orchestrating the modern industrial revolution. Even as I was trying to capture a little footage and write a review, the only thing I could think was, when does stuff happen? And yet, I could not stop playing. Every turn left me thinking, just one more turn. Like I was sitting in some magical casino where the slot machines don't cost money. But also you know you can't actually win money, but maybe the staff keeps bringing you free beer while you play or something, so you just keep going. There is so much to do here. Tons of options, wildly replayable, appeal for numerous personal strategic styles. There is a big learning curve, but I think it's appropriately rewarding, and there's just something novel about playing as Gandhi wartime trashing unsuspecting allies. It's practically edutainment. I mentioned it's aesthetically pleasant, and it functions very well considering it's essentially a full PC experience on a handheld. Those details might be relatively more important here, because if I'm expected to sink dozens of hours into this thing, I want it to be easy on my senses and not too irritating for that sedentary, unused muscle inside my head. I vaguely recall Civ 6 receiving a little criticism on release, maybe for added nuance or functional changes or something, I really don't remember. But I'm not super into the series, so I guess I don't see it. And personally, I recommend this game for most Switch owners. There's just a lot of good here. Maybe you stash it for a rainy day when you want something different, or maybe it's the only game you have for your Switch Lite and you're totally content with that. My goldfishy attention span makes me the former, but regardless, Switch game collections are better with this game in it. Owlboy is a stellar, adventure-y, puzzly, action-y platformer thing that came to the Switch in 2018 from D-Pad Studio, created in large part by a single person. It's no coincidence that this bun was in the oven for a long time, like 10 years. But the end result is a delicious, timeless pastry. I think a combination of long dev cycle and wide multi-platform release takes some shine off this gem, but that's a shame because it's the best game I played for this video, hands down. Aesthetically, it's excellent. Sometimes it feels like every small dev game is retro pixel art style, probably due to cost-effective creation and nostalgic interest, but Owlboy does it better than damn near anything else I can think of. It feels less like a choice born from limitation and more like the insane desire to demonstrate complete mastery of something fundamentally simple, like the Russian face-slapping championship. The music, on the other hand, takes zero shortcuts whatsoever. It's full and awesome start to finish. The holistic narrative feels lovingly crafted too. Now sure, the owl folk might be some Frankenstein's monster abomination of anatomical experimentation, or, you know, just your run-of-the-mill animal from Avatar: The Last Airbender. But the good guys are all generally likable and seem to have some depth to them. The story feels like something from a classic RPG with modern polish, and the Sky Island setting is really cool too. To summarize, I got emotionally invested in this game pretty quickly. Of course, most importantly, the gameplay is really good, and strikes a great balance of intuitive and unique. Not only can Otis fly, but he can also pick up and use various items differently, even toting around weapon-bearing allies like some kind of drive-by shooting taxi service. I was worried that having the fine motor skills of a baby wielding a power tool might make it hard for me to control both Otis and an ally simultaneously, but the game is very effective at teaching you experientially. As opposed to slogging through a shitty tutorial, you almost immediately feel like you're playing with impact. I had a legitimately hard time stopping Owlboy to get to the next game on my list. Maybe because that next game was Civ 6, and I was worried that my poorly programmed brain would lapse into an infinite one more turn loop. But also maybe because Owlboy is really good. I highly recommend it to most Switch owners, and again, it's easily the best game I played for this episode. I cannot think of many reasons to pass it up. And that's all I've got for now, but thankfully there's more out there that qualifies, so if you guys enjoy this, please let me know. Seriously, physical Nintendo Switch games are kind of my favorite thing right now. This sort of thing is my bag, baby. And yes, I absolutely just said that, so I could use this high-quality graphic I created in PowerPoint again. Segue, if you have game suggestions that fit this pinnacle of tight-ass category, naturally I'd love to hear those too. If you're on YouTube, you know the drill, but I genuinely hope you enjoyed this enough to give it a thumbs up. I'd be extremely grateful. Please consider subscribing to the Gamers Outpost channel, maybe hitting that little bell button for alerts, or checking out gamersoutpostllc.com. Thank you for watching. You behave yourselves, damn it, and I'll see you next time.